Hello and welcome to Pro-Life Primetime News. Today is Friday, May 19th. I'm Leslie Palma.
And I'm Teresa Watson. We have a jam-packed show tonight. In our top story tonight, attorney Alan Parker joins us to break down the mifepristone case.
The executive director of JMJ Pregnancy Center in Orlando joins us to discuss the ritualistic attack on the center.
California will pay $1.4 million in legal fees to churches. Find out why and other stories in Abortion in the News.
A war on words with former President Trump and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis escalates. Stay tuned for all the details in political news in a nutshell.
Leslie and I had an opportunity to meet with Mark Houck, pro-life advocate, and discuss the hearing titled Revisiting the Implications of the FACE Act.
Be sure to stay till the end to hear about a monument to life in Washington, D.C. 3 judges on the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals seemed sympathetic to pro-life plaintiffs Wednesday in a case challenging the FDA's approval in 2000 of the abortion drug mifepristone. The Fifth Circuit is considered one of the most conservative of the federal appeals courts, and all 3 judges hearing the case, known as the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine versus FDA, were appointed by Republican presidents and have ruled favorably toward pro-life causes in past cases.
At a 2-hour hearing in New Orleans this week, lawyers for the FDA and the pills manufacturer argued that the pro-life doctors who initiated the case did not have standing to do so. Erin Hawley from Alliance Defending Freedom represented the plaintiffs, who have said the approval of mifepristone during the administration of President Bill Clinton was fast-tracked unlawfully, and that it puts politics over women's health. Attorney Alan Parker, founder of the San Antonio-based Justice Foundation, was in the courtroom, and we've asked him to join us and give us his impressions of how the day in court went. Alan is a longtime pro-life advocate who was lead counsel for Norma McCorvey and Sandra Cano in their efforts to overturn the 2 landmark cases, Roe v. Wade and Doe v. Bolton, that legalized abortion in the U.S. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you for having me on, and thank you for all you do with this program.
So, Alan, we've been reporting on this story for months, but for those just tuning in, can you briefly outline the case for us?
Yes, the basic argument is the FDA did not follow the law when they did this kind of emergency program to get the abortion pill on the market. And for example, one of the things they did was just ignore the law that says they could only use a part of this reg for a serious illness or disease. And one of the judges asked them, are you saying motherhood is a disease? Did we just celebrate sickness for mothers? Because pregnancy is not an illness. That's one of the basic legal arguments in the case. The FDA has authority over illnesses. They don't have authority over all aspects of your life. And most women in the world will get pregnant. It's not a disease. And we used to say they're with child. It's a happy thing for most women. It's not a sickness that the FDA can control. That's one of the major arguments. The other is a law question. Can you have abortion procuring drugs sold through the mail or a common carrier like FedEx? The federal law is very clear. It says no abortion producing drug or device may be sent through the mail or a common carrier. And so the FDA has to get around that law. And yet the job of the FDA is to follow the law, and the job of the judges is to make sure the FDA follows the law. So those are some of the big questions. And the third big question is this more dangerous to women because she takes the pill herself in her own home and she sees the deceased baby in her own home? I'll just tell you, the first time a woman ever called me about this, and everything I know is because I represent thousands of women, including women hurt by abortion in this case as amicus curiae, she said, my God, they've lied to me. They lied to me. They told me it was not a baby. And this is my baby in my hand. I can see the hands and the feet. And can I bury my baby in the backyard? That's what she wanted to know. That's why this is different from surgical abortion.
Wow, it's horrific. Well, Alan, tell us about the scene inside and outside the courtroom. Were there protesters like from both sides, and was the courtroom mobbed?
Actually, no. It was very surprising and very unusual that the pro-life side dominated outside the courtroom. And one of the things I am a lawyer, licensed for practice before the Supreme Court, former professor of law. Our legal arguments are based on law and science and reality. What does abortion do to women in reality? But we also know that this is a spiritual battle. So we organize prayer. And I encourage all your people that are watching this to pray for this court and pray for the Supreme Court. But anyway, there were worshipers outside, and our side got there early and dominated the high ground. There were two young women lawyers who traveled from out of state to be here, who are pro-life young lawyers, who were the first two people in line. And then the media didn't show up. And so we got a lot of media coverage because we were there and we had been praying. You know, there's kind of a biblical phrase, "Oh Lord, rise up and scatter your enemies." That's kind of Psalm 68. And we don't battle against flesh and blood. The people on the other side are not enemy. We pray for their salvation, for the light of truth to come to their heart. We love all the former abortionists, like who've changed their mind after seeing sonograms and repent and say, I was wrong. That's everybody in America can do that. And there's a better way through the safe haven law. But I was shocked. We were the only ones there. Even at the end, there's always a big media crowd. There were TV cameras and everything. And the ADF attorneys who actually handled the case for the pro-life side, they did a great job in oral argument. They did theirs. And then there was nothing. And the government attorneys ran and fled, and the cameras, some of the newscasters showed them fleeing, saying, no comment, no comment. So the cameras were there, and I stepped up then on behalf of women hurt by abortion, who I represented in the case, including Cindy Collins from New Orleans. And we took the podium pan to let the people know how desperately bad this case and this drug, these chemical pills, are for women. That truth needs to be gotten out there.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So the hearing took place before 3 judges and 2 lawyers represented the pro-aborts. What kind of questions did the judges have for them?
Well, it was just wonderful from my standpoint, and the Lord arranged the circumstances. This case occurred 2 days after, well, it was like the Wednesday after Mother's Day. All right. So one of the things that the government attorneys started out saying was that the decision below by the judge was an unprecedented attack on the FDA's authority. And Judge Ho said, well, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but just the day before this, we had another case attacking the FDA, saying they didn't do things right. And he said, your argument that the FDA never makes mistakes and you just have to do what we say, that's not right. And in fact, he said it's the role of judges to make sure that the administrative agencies don't act arbitrarily or capriciously or violate the law. That is what we have the judges looking over the administrative agencies. So only God could arrange that the day before they had a FDA case. And then the other thing he said when he asked her, you're not saying that motherhood is a sickness, are you? Is that really your position here? And in a way that is their position, because that's only the law, what the law gave them authority over, disease and sickness. And she said, well, we've treated it as a condition and like acne. But anyway, and then he said, well, did we all celebrate mother's sickness a few days ago on Mother's Day? That's kind of how it started out. And it was kind of rough for the government attorneys for the rest of the time they had.
Well, Alan, what kinds of questions then also did the judges ask the lawyer representing the Pro-Life Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine?
They also asked, how have these doctors been hurt? Because doctors do have to have standing. In order, judges only decide cases or controversies. That's the limitation on the power of judges. They don't get to make rulings about what they want the law to be. They follow the law in cases or controversies. And in order to complain about a federal regulation, you have to be hurt by it some way. And there's 2 ways. You either have to be hurt yourself, or you're able to have third party standing where you can speak on behalf of others. So I'll address both of those because the judges asked about it. The judges themselves say, we are hurt because we're emergency room doctors, and the women are hurt in such huge numbers that we're have to dealing with the after effect of abortion. Sometimes we have to complete the abortion, which is against our conscience, because half the baby is left inside. And it's true that if the dead baby material is left in a woman, a condition called sepsis will occur that can kill her, because you have decaying human flesh decaying inside the woman's body. So it's true that if the baby has, for example, been stillborn or has already died, then sometimes it's helpful to remove the human remains from the mother's body. But they're doing it, and sometimes the embryos are still alive. The baby's half born. So it's very traumatic to the doctors, and it's dangerous to the women. So they're also saying, we want to protect the women. And the question is, can they represent the women? And our women that we represented, all of our women were part of Operation Outcry, which is women giving their testimonies legally. But 3 of the testimonies that we got from the case were from Silent No More Awareness Campaign's website, where 3 women who had chemical testimonies, we put their testimonies into our brief. They weren't actual parties because we don't have a personal relationship with them, but we also represent other women hurt by abortion, like Abby Johnson, who said she had a chemical abortion and it changed her mind forever. In fact, she became a strong advocate for surgical abortions because they're less damaging to the women. Eventually, she left Planned Parenthood when she saw an ultrasound sonogram that was guiding the abortion, and she saw the baby trying to flee away from being killed. And that's when she really got the light, sort of like Dr. Bernard Nathanson did when he started doing sonograms. When you can see what's going on, it's just like that woman said to me, my God, it's a baby. But the abortion industry hides that truth from the American women. So they asked, one of the judges asked it about these women. She said, we have amicus briefs from women who've been hurt by abortion who say, if there's no doctor involved and you can get it by mail, it allows men to force women to have an abortion. And that was the argument our women made in the brief we filed on behalf of women hurt by abortion. And we put in evidence that a Texas woman has already been arrested in Texas for forcing her daughter to take abortion pills. And men can get them online, and they can slip it into the woman's food, and she'll have a, quote, miscarriage, but he'll be getting an abortion despite her desire to keep the baby. So that was one of the arguments that we made that was asked about in the oral argument. And the other was one, they said, they cited Justice Ho, asked him, didn't Justice Alito say in the June medical case, which was a Louisiana case with hospital admitting privileges, didn't he say there's no real doctor-patient relationship? And the government attorney had admitted, yes, Your Honor, he said that. Well, that was based on the testimony of women who were hurt by abortion, giving their testimonies to Operation Outcry. And Cindy Collins of Louisiana was one of those women. She was with us in the courtroom, and then she spoke to the media outside the courtroom. And that's important. Why? It used to be that the abortion doctors got third-party standing to set aside protections statutes that were designed to protect women's health, where there's a conflict of interest there. The doctor doesn't want to have to comply with a regulation because it slows him down. Like in this case, they don't even want doctors to have to be there to give the medicine. They don't want doctors to be involved at all because it's time consuming for the doctors. But it's most of the time you want your medicine to be given to you by a doctor, particularly when it can result in emergency room treatment, which is undeniably true. This drug will produce a certain number of women having to go to the emergency room to get follow-up treatment. That's in the written disclosure statement of the drug. So the government saying these doctors, we don't know if they'll be hurt again. And one of the other justices said, well, it's undeniable that some women are going to go to emergency rooms. These are emergency room doctors. Can't we just assume they're going to see women that in this condition? So, and that's enough to grant standing. And then the women said, we want these doctors supporting regulations for our health. We're the women that get hurt if you don't have good regulations in effect. So we support their doctors, and there's no conflict of interest between the doctors who want safety and we who want safety. So the doctors should be given third-party standing. The women who've been injured by abortion say, please let these doctors speak for us. Don't let the abortion industry speak for us. They don't want our safety. They want profits and speed.
Well, Alan, what's your gut feeling about the court, how they will rule, and when do you think we can expect that decision?
I think it'll take at least 2 to 4 weeks to know, because they're going to want a careful opinion written, and they're going to want to study the record carefully. They're going to want to answer every objection that the government has. And they know that this case is going to the Supreme Court ultimately, so they want to write a careful opinion. I mean, they want to be careful in every case, but it is a little bit higher profile, and they'll want to be very careful. They know that they will be attacked unfairly if people don't look at the evidence, so they might write a long opinion with a lot of evidence in it, so people know this is not our personal opinion. We're simply following the law. This is what the law says. You may not send an abortion-producing drug through the mails. If they follow that law, it's not because they're biased against abortion. They're biased toward following the law, which is the right thing for a judge to do. I think we're going to see a judgment in favor of either complete restriction, because it was void from the beginning. Here's just one simple example. The doctors complained about this in 2000. The FDA is supposed to respond in 180 days. And then if you don't like the answer, then you can appeal. Well, you know how long the FDA took 6,000 days to finally respond to the objection. Anybody would say that's kind of arbitrary and capricious, isn't it? When the law tells you 180, maybe if they'd done it on the 200th day, a court might have said, well, that's close enough, but 6,000 days compared to 180. And yet the government is arguing, well, you didn't appeal when you should have. Well, we don't have a right to appeal until you say no, and you took 6,000 days. So that's kind of one of the arguments. I think we're going to win. I think women's safety will be improved. This is not actually an abolition of abortion. You can still get a surgical abortion. And one more argument that our brief made, it did not come up in oral argument here, but it did come up in oral argument at the Supreme Court when the court reversed Roe v. Wade. And so the Supreme Court, where this case will ultimately end up, they know there's no real doctor-patient relationship. The June medical case cited the women's testimonies, and they know about the safe haven. That's the argument I'm making now, that no woman has to have chemical abortion in order to be free of the baby, which is what women want. Women don't want to kill a baby. They're lied to. They're told it's not a baby. They try to believe it's not a human being. It's not a baby. But later they may come to see it really is. They see a picture of what's in abortion, and then they begin to grieve, and they need healing deeply for the tragedy. But they can get a safe haven law in all 50 states. A woman can safely relinquish her child at a hospital or fire station within a certain period of time after birth, or just leave the hospital and leave the baby behind and be free of the burden of parenting. So we can move to a more just society. Do we want to help women? Of course. Is telling them to get an abortion helpful? No. You can have devastating psychological consequences when you kill your own child. And so don't kill the baby. Don't hurt yourself. Use the safe haven law, and the state will remove all burden of childcare. Where will those children end up? There are 1 to 2 million families every year waiting to adopt newborn children. And the carefully vetted families will get new babies to love, and the woman can go on with her life, whatever she wants to do.
Well, thank you so much, Alan. It's always great talking to you, and we really appreciate you making the time to fill us in on the abortion pills day in court. I hope you'll come back when we have a new development, a decision, and as the case proceeds.
Thank you. I'd be honored to do so.
All right.
Good night, Alan. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you all.
Since the overturning of Roe v. Wade last year, we have reported on the many attacks on pregnancy centers across the nation. Last Wednesday, JMJ Pregnancy Center in Orlando was targeted by vandals who left the mutilated bodies of animals in front of the clinic.
Pregnancy resource centers offer women facing unexpected pregnancies real choices. To say they give out diapers and formula is a purposeful denigration of what these centers do. They offer resources and referrals for everything from job training to education to housing. They do give out diapers and formula, and maternity clothes and baby clothes, strollers, cribs, and just about everything a new mom needs. Priests for Life National Director Frank Pavone toured JMJ with a film crew last year, and they all came back in awe of everything the center accomplishes.
We have with us here tonight Mr. Bob Perrin, the Executive Director of JMJ Pregnancy Center, to talk about this vicious attack. Welcome to the show, Bob.
Hi, well, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So, Bob, our hearts were broken last week when we heard the news. How were the dead animals discovered?
Well, it was really sad. A couple of our staff members, as they were leaving, noticed them. And first, they couldn't even believe what they were seeing. So they came in to me, and I couldn't believe it. I thought they were joking. But when I went out, sure enough, we found 3 animals, a very large chicken, something that looked like a pheasant, and then what really shocked me was a baby lamb that had been beheaded and mutilated.
Oh,
Very sick and disgusting. And it just makes you wonder, why would somebody do something like that? So yeah, it was very bad.
So, Bob, what was your reaction? And did you immediately realize that it was an attack on the pregnancy center?
Yeah, we right away knew that this was something that wasn't, in the normal things that happen in our area. We live in a very economically depressed area, and so we see a lot of different things, a lot of homelessness, things like that. But this was obviously different than that. So we immediately called the local sheriff and the police for them to come out and report it. It was obviously an attack, I believe, a spiritual attack on JMJ, because one of the things that makes us different in this community is we are known to be a Catholic-based organization. So I think it was spiritually, it was specifically us that they targeted as the largest Catholic pregnancy center in Central Florida.
well, has this bizarre attack changed the way that you and your staff conduct business?
Well, our staff was very shaken by this. I mean, obviously, it's one thing to go spray paint the side of a wall. It's a whole different thing when you start throwing animals in your yard. And our staff was very concerned. It has not changed how we do anything, though, at JMJ. We work hard for the moms that we serve. And it's really sad that the only reason we could think possibly that somebody would do this to us is because we don't refer for abortions or don't do abortions here at our clinic. We want to give moms all their choices. We want to give moms hope. And the saddest part to me is all of our services are free. And we are serving many, many minority moms. And we serve a lot of very poor moms as well.
Well, Bob, there have been more than 200 attacks on pregnancy centers, churches, pro-life offices, and activists that have been logged since the Supreme Court leak. Mainstream media has hardly covered any of it. Why do you think that is? And has your story been publicized?
Our story has been publicized. It was picked up by Fox News. But, we were pretty unique. I think there's centers that are getting attacked all over the country, obviously over 200. Not like this. This is very unique with the animals. So I think it did catch the attention of kind of national news for a second. But the reality is it goes very unnoticed most of the time, which is sad because again, only reason we're being attacked is because we stand up for life and try to help moms who are in a crisis. If this would have been turned around the other way, and there would have been an attack like this, I believe, on any abortion clinic or Planned Parenthood, the media would have been there in full force. And what a horrible hate crime this was. But when it comes to pregnancy centers, it just seems like it doesn't fit the media's narrative, or most of the media. So it's just crickets.
Yeah. Well, Bob, let's end on a positive note. Would you give us a brief history of JMJ Pregnancy Centers and the vital work you do?
Absolutely. I would love to. JMJ has been around for 33 years in the Orlando and Kissimmee communities in Central Florida. We serve a little bit over 1,200 moms a year. Last year, we know that we saved around 970 moms and helped them make a choice for life. We've never once had a mom come back and say to us that they wish they would have made a different decision. We not only walk with them throughout their pregnancy, but for the first year afterwards. We have a place called our Lifting Lives Center where moms come for educational help, for help with housing, mental health counseling, whatever they need to help them succeed as a mom. The myth that is out there about pregnancy centers that you mentioned at the beginning is real. We are here to walk with these moms every step of the way and help them. So, we are a full medical clinic. We have physicians that see many of our clients. We also have sonographers and a nurse. So the other myth sometimes is we're not really a real place. Well, we are. We're a real medical clinic, and I'm proud of our staff and all of the work that they've done to help these moms.
Well, Bob, before we say goodnight, could you tell us, people in the Orlando area, where can they go to get more information on your center?
Oh, absolutely. They can go to jmjpc.org and they can learn all about the work that we do. And they can join us as volunteers. They could also join us as donors to help us continue this mission.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us today. And we're so grateful for the work that you and your staff do. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Good night, Bob.
Good night.
Democrats in the Republican-dominated South Carolina House filed 950 proposed amendments to a pro-life heartbeat bill, but all of them were deflected, and the bill passed Wednesday along mostly party lines. The Senate will take up the bill next week, and Governor Henry McMaster will sign it once it passes that chamber. A 2021 heartbeat bill was permanently blocked last year by the state Supreme Court, but this new bill has more chance of being enacted since Roe v. Wade has been overturned. We are going to make it hurt if they're going to force this on us, Democrat Representative Beth Bernstein threatened before the vote, but she offered no details on how she plans to cause pain to pro-lifers. We're keeping an eye on Nebraska, where conservative lawmakers believe they have just enough votes to pass a bill that would ban abortion after 12 weeks. The bill has been paired with one banning gender reassignment surgery or drugs for minors. A supermajority of 33 votes would end a debate and clear the way for a simple majority of the legislature's 49 lawmakers to pass the combined bill. Republican Governor Jim Pillen has said he would sign it into law and it would take effect immediately. The North Carolina General Assembly on Tuesday overrode Governor Roy Cooper's veto of a law that protects babies from abortion at 12 weeks. Cooper, a Democrat who has vetoed pro-life legislation in the past, vetoed the Care for Women, Children, and Families Act on Saturday, and the Assembly, with veto-proof supermajorities in both chambers, voted to override him on Tuesday. The law will take effect July 1st. A Democrat representative, Tricia Cotham, changed parties last month, giving that House its pro-life supermajority. The North Carolina Values Coalition, a Christian conservative group, called the 12-week ban the beginning of North Carolina's first real step towards becoming a pro-life state. California will pay $1.4 million in legal fees to 4 churches that objected to the state's strong-arm tactics to force them to cover abortions in their health insurance plans. The government can't force a church or any other religious employer to violate their faith and conscience by participating in funding abortion, said Jeremiah Gallus, senior counsel with the Alliance Defending Freedom, which represented the churches. The pro-life movement is mourning the death of Mark Geitzen, a Kansas activist who forced a recount of last year's abortion referendum. Geitzen was alone in his single-engine Cessna Tuesday night when it crashed in northern Nebraska. He was 69. Geitzen, who grew up in Bismarck, North Dakota, and served in the U.S. Marines, moved to Kansas in the 1970s to work for Boeing. He became the chairman of the Sedgwick County Republican Party after the Summer of Mercy pro-life protests in 1991 in Wichita. Operation Rescue President Troy Newman described Geitzen as irreplaceable and said he was the hardest working guy I know in the pro-life movement. Last summer, voters in Kansas rejected a proposed amendment to the state constitution to declare that it does not protect abortion rights. When pro-lifers demanded a recount in 9 counties, Geitzen used credit cards to pay most of the $120,000 cost. Minutes after Montana Governor Greg Gianforte on Tuesday signed 4 laws restricting abortion, including one that would immediately ban dismemberment abortion, Planned Parenthood filed a lawsuit seeking to block the law and keep the brutal abortion procedure in its arsenal of weapons used against the unborn. The extreme lengths to which Planned Parenthood is willing to go to protect such a barbaric procedure makes it clear that the abortion industry only cares about its bottom line, not protecting women, said Denise Harley, an attorney with Alliance Defending Freedom. The firm is defending the law along with the Montana Attorney General's office. And finally, lawyers for the undercover journalist David Daleiden have asked the U.S. Supreme Court to reverse lower court decisions that permanently prohibit Daleiden from publishing 500 hours of video he recorded secretly at National Abortion Federation trade shows, and that awarded the Federation more than $6 million in attorney's fees and costs. In July 2015, Daleiden and his Center for Medical Progress began releasing video that highlighted the harvest and sale of body parts from aborted babies. Instead of going after Planned Parenthood and others caught on tape confessing to the ghoulish practice, Daleiden became the target of investigations prompted by then California Attorney General Kamala Harris and her successor, Javier Becerra, who's now the nation's Secretary of Health. Daleiden is still facing criminal charges and millions of dollars in fines for uncovering this secret harvest. And that's Abortion in the News.
As a war of words with former President Donald Trump escalates, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is expected to formally enter the 2024 presidential race next week. DeSantis' announcement has long been expected, and it seems to have ratcheted up the growing animosity between the 2 GOP hopefuls. Trump told an online news outlet last week that the heartbeat bill signed into law by DeSantis last month is too harsh. During a signing ceremony for an unrelated bill, DeSantis fired back, noting that Trump won't say what kind of restrictions he would back. As a Florida resident, you know he didn't give an answer about would you have signed the heartbeat bill that Florida did, that had all the exceptions that people talk about, DeSantis said. On a call to donors and supporters yesterday, DeSantis said there are only 2 people who have a shot at winning the presidential election next year. You have basically 3 people at this point that are credible in this whole thing: Biden, Trump, and me, the New York Times quoted DeSantis. And I think of those 3, 2 have a chance to get elected president: Biden and me, based on all the data in the swing states, which is not great for the former president and probably insurmountable because people aren't going to change their view of him. Stay tuned for Trump's response. When pro-abortion California Senator Dianne Feinstein returned to the U.S. Senate last week after a 2-month absence, she was in a wheelchair and appeared very frail, as she said she was continuing to recover from shingles. Now it has come to light, according to the New York Times and other outlets, that she was much sicker than she reported. Her shingles virus caused vision and balance impairments and facial paralysis, and also brought on a case of encephalitis, a swelling of the brain that can cause lasting memory and language problems, confusion, and mood disorders. But the 89-year-old senator is still not talking about stepping down, prompting a longtime supporter and major donor to the Democrats to suggest that Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer or California Governor Gavin Newsom should step in and speak to her about resigning. I feel she needs to step down, said Susie Tompkins Buell, and yet she isn't willing to in this state of mind. President Biden will withdraw his nomination of former New Hampshire Attorney General Michael Delaney to the First Circuit Court of Appeals because neither Democrats nor Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee will support him, and because Delaney asked the president to remove him from consideration. The Democrats have complained that as Attorney General, Delaney committed the sin, in their eyes, of supporting a law calling for parents to be notified when their minor daughter has an abortion. His nomination also was opposed by those who objected to his answers when he was questioned about his role in representing a boarding school under investigation for the sexual assault of a student. South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, the top Republican on the Judiciary Committee, released a statement explaining his opposition to Delaney. His answers to questions from committee members regarding a lawsuit where he represented a private school accused of allowing sexual harassment and assault of a minor student were beyond the pale bad. The parents of the victim involved in that litigation have come to the committee continuously as the nomination has been brought up. I understand and share their concerns. Joe Biden may not appear on the primary ballot in New Hampshire, and it will be his own fault if it happens. In an effort to reward South Carolina for its support in the 2020 election and punish New Hampshire for its embrace of Senator Bernie Sanders, Biden pushed for changes to the nominating calendar that would strip the Granite State of its first-in-the-nation primary. But there's a state law requiring New Hampshire's contest be held a week before any others. And unless Republicans in charge of the governor's office and state legislature are willing to amend the law, the primary could be held without the sitting president putting his name on the ballot. The Democratic National Committee is looking for a solution to the problem, but Democrats in New Hampshire don't appear ready to help. We can't change our laws, and that's that. We're hosting the first primary, Ray Buckley, chairman of the New Hampshire Democratic Party, told Politico. The president can decide if he wants to put his name on the ballot. And that's political news in a nutshell.
On Tuesday, the House Judiciary Subcommittee on the Constitution and Limited Government held a hearing titled Revisiting the Implications of the FACE Act to examine recent attacks on pregnancy centers and pro-life facilities and the Biden administration's use of the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances, FACE Act, against pro-lifers.
We have Mark Houck, pro-life advocate, with us tonight. He was a witness at the hearing. Thank you for joining us, Mark.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Well, Mark, will you give us a brief explanation of what the FACE Act is and what was its intent?
Sure. So back in 1993, and the act was formally instituted into law in 1994. Senator Ted Kennedy, Chuck Schumer, these are the guys that proposed this federal act called the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances. It was designed to prevent pro-lifers at the time from doing rescues. So initially, that was the impetus behind it. However, Republicans would not allow it to go forward unless they applied the law to churches and pregnancy resource centers. So it was instituted under Bill Clinton in 1994 to effectively stop the rescue movement, and has since been kind of re-energized through the Dobbs case against pro-lifers. And they're not using it to prosecute places of worship that are being vandalized and pregnancy resource centers, but in a very targeted way, going after pro-lifers like myself and others. And that's why they had the committee hearing this past Tuesday to discuss whether this law needs to be repealed or revised in some way.
Well, so you mentioned that you were a victim of the FACE Act yourself. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. So I was praying in front of a Planned Parenthood in Philadelphia in 2021, and I've been doing it for 20 years. My FACE rights were violated because I escorted a couple abortion-minded women to a pregnancy resource center from the Planned Parenthood, and I was impeded in my progress and really stopped by an escort. But they didn't take into account with me. What they did was, after an escort was repeatedly badgering my son on the street corner that same day in October, I got into an altercation with him. There were no women around, no pro-abortion women, abortion-minded women or abortion-minded men. It was just me and this escort. And I actually pushed him away from my son to protect my son. And they applied the FACE Act against me. Now, I was nowhere near the clinic entrance as well. So they, inappropriately applied it to me. And of course, we had to go through a long trial and a persecution to get that vindication. But nonetheless, it was quite a journey. And, we need to do something about this because regular citizens like us, our First Amendment rights are being trampled upon through this misapplication of the FACE law.
Well, can you share a little bit of the details of the hearing that you were just at this week?
Sure. So there were 5 witnesses that were there. Myself, in addition to a woman who works at a pregnancy resource center that was vandalized. And then there was an attorney who was representing the Liberty Council, representing other pregnancy resource centers, and a young lady from Family Research Council who was representing the churches that had been vandalized, as well as a woman who was representing abortion clinics. So there was kind of 4 pro-life, if you will, and 1 pro-abortion person that the committee was asking questions of that day. We had a chance to open with some remarks for 5 minutes, each one of us, and then the committee members, led by Chairman Mike Johnson from Louisiana, began to make comments and ask questions. And that's essentially for 2 hours what happened.
Well, before we close, what do you hope might possibly be achieved from this hearing?
Sure. So it was a great honor to be there, to share our story, to kind of really bring to life what some people said isn't true, what Merrick Garland, Attorney General in the Justice Department, said wasn't true, wasn't accurate. So it was an opportunity to really shed light on the events that have occurred. And so, I think it was important for the committee to hear that. So my hope is that, my story will, build to ultimate repeal of this act, which really isn't necessary anymore. But nonetheless, I don't even know if it ever was necessary. But nonetheless, they can't refute the story. The Democrats that were on the committee really could not cross-examine me, because what are they going to do? It's only going to make them look bad by cross-examining a father who had his home raided and terrorized and victimized in such ways. So, they wanted to dismiss the whole proceeding and basically move on to other things, but the Republicans won't allow that to happen since they have the majority. So, the hope is that there's continued discussion and conversation and ultimately repeal of the FACE Act, or at the very least, make sure that places of worship and pregnancy resource centers are getting equal justice under the law. So that's exactly what needs to happen at minimum. But moving forward, my hope is that there will be no need for this FACE Act, which was totally designed in the beginning to persecute pro-lifers.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for joining us, and we appreciate you jumping on here, taking time away from your family commitment this morning. So thank you for all of your work out there and all of the street activists. We really appreciate it.
Great. Thanks so much. Appreciate your help and getting the word out. God bless you.
All right. Bye, Mark.
Advent, a bronze and stainless steel sculpture of the Virgin Mary cradling unborn baby Jesus in her womb, was unveiled Wednesday at Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. Timothy Schmaltz, the Canadian sculptor who created the piece, told Catholic News Agency at the dedication ceremony that we have to celebrate human life, and that's what this sculpture is saying.
Schmaltz told the news service that to have a monument to life in the nation's capital makes a powerful statement. The hope with this sculpture is bringing a permanent physical symbol that says yes to life, that says life is great, the sculptor said.
Schmaltz is one of the most renowned Catholic artists working today. His sculptures are on display across the world. His Angels Unaware piece displaying immigrants can be seen at the Vatican, and his homeless Jesus is in the Holy Land with copies in other locations. He hopes to install smaller versions of the Advent statue in all 50 states.
Teresa and I will be traveling next week, so we will not have a show next Friday. We will be back for our regular show on Friday, June 2nd, so please be sure to join us. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on Pro-Life Primetime News, produced at Priests for Life headquarters in Titusville, Florida. We hope you will tune in every Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, except for next week.
We hope you will support this show and all of our broadcasts by making a donation to prolifegift.org. These donations help fund all of our work here at Priests for Life, which enables us to continue educating, equipping, and activating God's people to end abortion. I'm Teresa Watson, Executive Manager.
I'm Leslie Palma, Communications Director. Remember, life is the only choice.